Hello and welcome to Drama Recaps. Today we'll be exploring the 2017 American drama film, Gifted. Spoilers ahead. As dawn breaks, young Mary is gearing up for her inaugural day of school. Her caretaker, Frank, takes care of breakfast, but he's not merely her uncle, he also happens to be her father. He's been the one raising Mary since her mother tragically passed away during her infancy. Mary is reluctant to attend school. She doesn't feel the need for it, and she isn't particularly fond of interacting with people. However, Frank insists on her going. Eventually, Mary boards the bus and arrives at school. Bonnie, a math teacher, is busy introducing the basics of arithmetic to the students. Meanwhile, Mary grows restless as the class is working on rudimentary calculations. Bonnie grows frustrated by Mary's lack of respect in the classroom and instructs her to raise her hand before speaking. Following this, Bonnie tries to challenge Mary with more complex problems. Surprisingly, despite her tender age, Mary answers the questions correctly. Bonnie then presents her with a more difficult task, a large multiplication problem. Despite the use of calculators, the students can't find the correct answer, and Mary takes her time responding. Bonnie presumes Mary doesn't know the answer and moves on. Suddenly, Mary provides the correct answer, leaving Bonnie speechless. Upon verifying the answer, Bonnie is taken aback by Mary's correct response. Meanwhile, the school's principal is busy welcoming the new students. However, Mary addresses her in a rather audacious manner, demanding that Frank be called to collect her. Frank arrives and takes Mary home. Bonnie, who has learned about Frank's regular visits to a bar and his emotional turmoil, decides to meet him there. Frank apologizes for Mary's behavior, explaining that it's her first day of school and she's a bit tense. However, Bonnie didn't want to discuss Mary's manners. Instead, she shares her belief that Mary is unusually gifted for her age. Frank admits that Mary was taught to do mental arithmetic in the style used in concentration camps, and he had learned it when he was a kid. After the discussion, Frank and Mary return home. Frank is a boat mechanic and reprimands Mary for breaking their agreement about not flaunting her intelligence in school. He wants her to experience a normal childhood. Mary apologizes to him, and they spend some quality time at sea, where Mary enjoys the beach with her pet cat. As days roll by, Mary adjusts to school life and interacts with her peers. On one such day, Bonnie decides to test Mary's academic abilities further. She hands her a university-level examination paper after Mary finishes the regular exam swiftly. To Bonnie's surprise, Mary completes the complex exam without any hiccups, exuding an air of self-assuredness. After her class, Bonnie decides to delve into Mary's background. She discovers that Mary's mother, Diane, was a renowned mathematician, famed for solving complex equations that had baffled the world. However, Diane's life ended in a tragic suicide, the reasons for which remain unknown. This led to Frank, her brother, stepping in as Mary's guardian. Later, Bonnie visits Frank at the bar he frequents. She confronts him about Mary's true intellectual potential, revealing the university-level exam that Mary effortlessly completed. Frank then shares the heartbreaking story of how he found Mary alone on the couch after returning from a date, with Diane having taken her own life in the bathroom. He further discloses that Mary's father abandoned them when she was very young, and that event significantly impacted Mary's behavior. Although Frank acknowledges Mary's genius, he insists on her being treated like any other student. He believes this is necessary for her to lead a normal life. The next day, Mary and her classmates are working on an animal project on the bus. When a bully causes a fellow student's project to break, Mary retaliates by hitting the bully with a book, causing a bloody nose. This incident prompts a meeting between Frank and the headmistress, who offers Mary a full scholarship to the prestigious Oaks Academy for Gifted Children. However, Frank rejects the offer due to past family issues with Oaks math schools. He is adamant about not wanting Mary to endure the same struggles his family did. The following day, Mary apologizes to her classmates for her outburst and promises not to resort to violence again. She then applauds the boy whose project was destroyed, proclaiming his work the best amongst them all. Upon returning home, Mary is introduced to her grandmother Evelyn for the first time. Evelyn gifts Mary a costly laptop containing a digital mathematics book. Mary nonchalantly admits to having already read the book and being well beyond its level. After Evelyn leaves, Frank confronts her about this sudden visit after 7 years. He suspects that the headmistress had contacted her. Evelyn avoids giving a direct answer and criticizes Frank about the place they live in, stating it's unfit for Mary. Ignoring Frank's retort, she leaves. Inside the house, Frank finds Mary engrossed in a math book on her new laptop. This prompts him to confront Evelyn again, revealing that Diane's suicide note specifically asked that Mary not be left in Evelyn's care. He affirms that Diane wanted Mary to have a normal life, not the luxurious one that Evelyn wants to offer. Frank dismisses Evelyn's plan to immerse Mary in the world of mathematics, vowing to protect Mary from this fate. A moment of tension arises when Evelyn threatens to fight for Mary's custody if Frank doesn't reconsider his decisions regarding Mary's upbringing. Amidst this, Frank finds Mary constantly absorbed in a mathematics book. Worrying that Mary is becoming overly introverted, he insists she goes outside and takes a break from her studies. Evelyn, true to her word, files a lawsuit against Frank for custody of Mary. The court adjourns for the day, deciding to inspect Mary's living conditions. This decision stems from Evelyn's lawyer claiming that Frank's home is inappropriate for a child. Frank then asks their neighbor Roberta, who shares a motherly bond with Mary, to look after her for the night. As Roberta takes care of Mary, Frank meets Bonnie at a bar. She expresses her sadness about Mary's custody situation. Their conversation deepens as the night progresses, leading to them growing closer. When Bonnie asks what Frank fears most, his distress over the possibility of losing Mary becomes evident. Despite feeling guilty for spending time alone with her student's guardian, Bonnie ends up staying over at Frank's house. The next day, Mary, returning from Roberta's house, finds Bonnie at Frank's place. Bonnie, embarrassed, makes a quick exit. Frank, agitated by Mary's unexpected arrival and the awkward situation it created, reprimands her. This results in Mary crying and retreating to her room. Realizing his outburst, Frank later apologizes to Mary. Subsequently, Frank receives a court notice stating that Mary must spend 2 days with her grandmother, Evelyn. During this stay, Evelyn shows Mary photos of her mother, Diane. Meanwhile, Bonnie confides in Frank about her fear of getting expelled from the school due to her relationship with him. Evelyn takes Mary to a university where a wall displays the individuals who have solved the 7 most challenging mathematical equations. An equation called the Navier-Stokes is attributed to Diane because she was on the brink of solving it before her death. If solved, this would have earned her a Nobel Prize in physics and mathematics. Mary confidently asserts that her photo will be on this wall one day. Evelyn then introduces Mary to a mathematician to tackle a complex equation. As they leave, Mary points out a mistake in the equation. Upon returning to the mathematician, Mary corrects the equation and successfully solves it, astonishing both the mathematician and Evelyn. Once her stay with Evelyn is over, Mary returns home to Frank. She admits her affection for Evelyn but expresses her preference to stay with Frank, finding her grandmother too domineering. Frank reassures Mary, promising not to abandon her. The court reconvenes for the continuation of Mary's custody case the following day. Evelyn attempts to bolster her case by summoning Mary's biological father, whom Mary has never met. However, Frank's lawyer manages to discredit him as he's never fulfilled any guardian duties nor shown any interest in Mary's life. This evidence tips the scales in Frank's favor, much to everyone's surprise. After the hearing, Frank tells Mary about her father's appearance in court, which triggers an emotional response from Mary. In an effort to uplift her spirits, Frank takes Mary and Roberta to a hospital. There, they spend hours watching families joyously celebrate the birth of their children. Frank uses this experience to remind Mary of the joy her own birth brought, and they end up spending the night in the hospital, taking part in the happiness of the families around them. After several court sessions, Frank's lawyer proposes an unexpected solution: to place Mary in a care home for potential adoption by a suitable family. He argues that this could satisfy both parties and warns Frank of the possibility of Evelyn winning the custody battle due to her wealth and the promise of a better life for Mary. After some contemplation, Frank agrees to this proposal. Frank meets with a family interested in adopting Mary and, albeit with a heavy heart, consents to place her in their care. The custody trial concludes without a clear win or loss for either party. Tearfully, Frank takes Mary to her new home, promising her monthly visits and the choice to live with him when she's older. However, Mary is distraught, accusing Frank of breaking his promise to always stay with her. Frank tries to console her, but a distressed Mary pushes him away and accuses him of abandoning her. Frank returns home, distressed by the separation from Mary. Bonnie visits him, attempting to soothe his nerves. Frank confides in Bonnie about his cherished moments with Mary, expressing his sadness over their separation. In the midst of his emotional turmoil, Frank abruptly leaves Bonnie. The next day, Bonnie comes across an adoption ad for Mary's cat and promptly informs Frank. Suspicious, Frank visits the animal shelter and discovers that the cat was given up by someone allergic to cats. Realizing that Evelyn is allergic, Frank concludes that she is somehow involved. Together with Roberta, Frank visits the family that took Mary in, only to discover that Evelyn is keeping Mary with her. Frank urges Mary to come with him, but she initially refuses and runs out of the house. Before following Mary, Frank leaves a notebook for Evelyn, one written by Mary's mother, Diane. Upon reading the notebook, Evelyn discovers that Diane had actually solved the Navier-Stokes equation before her death. Outside, Frank manages to catch up to Mary, and they share a comforting hug, signifying their enduring bond despite the challenges they face. She retaliates against him for leaving her in solitude, but Frank makes amends and assures her that he won't repeat the same mistake. Overwhelmed with grief, Mary discloses that her beloved feline companion was taken away from her, but Frank pacifies her, letting her know that the cat is now in his care. They decide to pay a visit to Evelyn, with Frank opting to have a confidential conversation with her. In the meantime, Evelyn accuses Frank of dishonesty, proclaiming that if Diane had truly cracked the equation, she would have shared her breakthrough with the entire globe. However, Frank counters her argument, claiming that Diane had confided in him prior to her demise, requesting him not to divulge the contents of her notebook until Evelyn's passing. Evelyn is left flabbergasted by this revelation, and Frank departs, leaving her alone with the notebook. He makes the decision to take Mary back home. After a few moments, Evelyn flips open the notebook, only to encounter her daughter's tear-stained pages. Overwhelmed with guilt and regret for having pushed Diane into a state of despair leading to her suicide, Evelyn breaks down. Amidst her tears, she converses with a fellow mathematician, urging him to make a public announcement about Diane's monumental accomplishment, the resolution of the Navier-Stokes equation. Several months down the line, Mary, despite her tender age, enrolls as a student at the university. Frank becomes her constant companion, escorting her after her classes to a children's park. Here, she spends her time playing and frolicking around with her peers, just like any other kid.